Hello, this is Jay Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. First, we have Israeli minister says Jews are above the law when evicting a man from his own house of over 40 years, posted by Jacob Anders, and that's a cross post from the Actually That's Insane subreddit. And yeah, personally, I don't think that they should, that minister should have said that or evicted the man from this house. But ultimately, those in positions of government authority, usually you can't hold them accountable since they have the force of the state on their side. And when someone has the force of the state on their side, sadly, that means they can pretty much do whatever they want to. And if you dare strike back, they'll send you to jail for life or worse. And that's just going to show you how unfair life is, when one side has all the power and the other side has pretty much no power. And that's my thoughts there. Next we have the DOJ's flimsy legal theories support Trump's anti-weaponization fund from Reason.com, posted by Jedi Porcupine. And yeah, personally, I don't think the DOJ should be putting taxpayer money into Trump's anti-weaponization fund, but ultimately, those in positions of authority, as I said, and pretty much all these, every podcast, and this was last post as well, those in positions of authority can pretty much justify doing whatever they want to, especially when it comes to taxpayer dollars. They can throw it at whatever bullshit they want to, and oftentimes there's nothing you can do about it. And yeah, it's personally why I would say taxation should be voluntary, and people should be able to earmark where their taxpayer dollars go to, so they don't go to stuff like this. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Next, we have Justice Denied, Injustice Funded, How the DOJ Shields Misconduct While Bankrolling Extremism from Cato.org, posted by Jedi Porcupine. And yeah, personally, I don't think the DOJ should be bankrolling extremism and shielding misconduct, but ultimately, the DOJ is always going to act in its own self-interest, just like every other branch of the government, and sadly, that just, means rewarding friends and punishing enemies. It's the same when the Democrats are in power, but Reddit would never dare call them out on it since the Democrats are the in-group while the Republicans are the out-group. But, it just goes to show you that, it's just all pretty much political theater. The Uniparty pretty much agrees with 95% of stuff and uses culture war wedge issues like abortion and LGBTQ to keep people divided. Next we have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says she will now oppose all U.S. military aid to Israel from NBCNews.com, posted by Donald Key, and that's cross-post from the No Filter News subreddit. And yeah, personally, I think she should have always been opposing all U.S. military aid to Israel. I think she used to support defensive aid to Israel, but yeah, I definitely do agree with her opposing all U.S. military aid to Israel. That being said, she's just doing that because that's the popular thing among progressives currently. I don't really trust her at all. I think she's very smarmy and politician-like, and I definitely don't like how much her stands AstroTurf Reddit in regard to her support. And yeah, personally, I don't trust her. And if she wants to oppose all military aid to Israel, that's good, that's fine, and I agree with it. But ultimately, she's only doing it because that's the way the winds are shifting, rather than for any principled reasons. And yeah, ultimately, she's just gonna pretty much just keep jerking herself off just like everyone else in Washington. And yeah, I definitely do think she's very much a phony, just like pretty much all the other politicians in Washington. She's just a fake savior the left likes to push to make themselves feel better, when in reality she's just another DNC shill, I would say. Next we have, even Republicans are rebelling at Trump's blatantly corrupt anti-weaponization fund from Reason.com, posted by Jedi Porcupine. And yeah, personally, as I said earlier, I don't really care about the anti-weaponization fund, but if that's what Trump wants to do, and he has the ability to get away with it, nothing stopped him so far for anything in the past. What's going to stop him here? Ultimately, it just goes to show you that those in positions of authority are able to get away with pretty much whatever they feel like, and oftentimes there's nothing you can do about it. And yeah, that's my thoughts there. Next, we have Governor Newsom, press office at Gov Press Office on Freds.com, posted by Donald Key. I guess that's a Freds post from Governor Newsom, and that says, breaking, California impose 100% tax on payments distributed from Trump's January 6th slush fund. And yeah, personally, I'm against the January 6th slush fund. I think that's the what do they call it? The anti-weaponization fund they were talking about earlier. But ultimately, I think it's a double. It's a double problem here, because the government shouldn't be having slush funds to distribute to political allies, but at the same time, the government shouldn't be taxing money on them at all. And it just goes to show you that ultimately, I think that the libertarian position here is it's two wrongs don't make right. The slush funds are wrong, but also that taxing it at 100% is wrong as well. So ultimately, it just goes to show you that they're pretty much the uniparty is pretty much two sides of the same bullshit coin, and oftentimes there's nothing you can do about it. Next we have Rothbard, what is a model libertarian, or I guess it says modal libertarian, posted by Amogus Devilman, and they said, what is a modal libertarian? A term coined, or at least popularized in the spiting sense by Murray Rothbard in the pages of the Rothbard-Rockwell report in the early 1990s. Modal is used in a statistical sense. It means the most common, typical, or representative example of libertarians he saw dominating the movement at the time. What Rothbard meant by modal libertarian, he was describing a very specific personality type that had become the norm in libertarian circles: rude, boorish, and lacking basic manners or civility, treats libertarians as a license for personal aggression, calling strangers to denounce them, barging into conversations, etc., hypocritically obsessed with tolerance and fury, while being supremely intolerant in practice, especially of traditional norms, parents, neighbors, or anyone who objects to their rudeness. Lifelong adolescent rebels who never grew up, using libertarian philosophies as a cover for bad behavior instead of learning simple decency, often culturally left-aligned, left or modal libertarians, quick to cheer certain feminist causes, politically correct language policing, or pro-death propaganda while claiming ideological purity. Rothbard contrasts this with libertarianism grounded in manner, civility, and cultural realism alongside radical principle. Key observations: they assume a kind of communism or libertarian possessions. Your time, house, and attention are fair game because we're all libertarians. Any criticism of their behavior immediately gets turned into an endless abstract debate about tolerance versus intolerance. They love lecturing experts on topics they barely understand. His most famous treatment of the phenomenon is the essay Tolerance or Manners, a must-read skewering of the modal mindset. Bottom line, Rothbard loved libertarianism. He was simply exasperated by its subcultural excesses and the rude teenage rebel energy that had become the modal, i.e. most common version in the movement. And yeah, I would agree with all that. There's a lot of libertarians, I would say mostly left libertarians, who want to justify using libertarianism to be assholes 24/7s. And there's some right libertarians who justify that as well, I would say. But ultimately, I think the libertarian position is, you shouldn't be an asshole. But if you want to be an asshole, you should be able to, and you shouldn't be illegal to be an asshole. But that being said, being an asshole should be stigmatized, and you should definitely have manners rather than constantly be a jerk, because you can be a jerk. Just because you can be a jerk doesn't mean you should be a jerk, I would say. And that's my thoughts there. Next we have Donald Trump is not only attempting to have control over the media, but is attempting to have control of the courts, which explains why criminals aren't getting arrested, charged, prosecuted for sexual abuse, and imprisoned in foreign governments. That's called seeking dictatorship, posted by Serious Meaning 5220. And yeah, personally, I don't really care for Donald Trump and how he constantly seeks to jerk himself off. But Reddit's been saying it's pretty much the same thing every day for the past decade at this point, so eventually you just kind of get numb to it all. I think Donald Trump, I don't really care for him, but outside of constantly baiting people on social media, he's pretty much just your average U.S. president. He's really just the figurehead first and foremost. He's going to let the deep state, military-industrial complex, satanic cabal of lizard people really run the country, and it just goes to show you that, he might market himself as this populist hero, but in reality, he's just another deep state puppet rather than a principled populist hero. And it just goes to show you that, politicians, they like to market themselves as good on the campaign trail, but when they get into office, they'll just keep up the status quo. And it just goes to show you that, you can't vote yourself free because voting yourself, because ultimately they all have the same master anyways. And Yeah, and if they are, if by some miracle an actual principled person like Thomas Massey does manage to get into the government, they'll eventually find a way to kick him out for staying too true to his principles, and oftentimes there's nothing you can do about it. So that just goes to show you that ultimately, if voting mattered, they wouldn't let us do it, and because you can vote for someone, but since votes aren't backed by force, it doesn't really matter, and the deep state will always put in whoever it wants in whatever position it wants anyway, and oftentimes there's nothing you can do about it since they have the resources and money to pretty much buy whatever seat in government they want to. And yeah, that's just the grim reality of the world we live in. That's why electoral politics are inherently flawed, because since people act in their own self-interest and will act for it, and will be able to get away with whatever economic and whatever they can, for whatever economic and social capital they have access to. The people in positions of authority when it comes to economic and social capital, those who have the resources in it, are usually able to take whatever they want to. And when it comes to government power, and oftentimes, there's nothing you can do about it. And yeah, it's personally why I would disagree with having any hierarchical government structure like the one we have currently, because it will inherently reward those who are self-serving and want to use the state to enrich themselves. But Reddit, of course, only cares about when it's the out group, though, and the Republicans. They never call Joe Biden or Barack Obama or any in-group Democrat out for pretty much doing the same thing. But ultimately, it just goes to show you, it's all just theater, really. It's all pretty much just WWE. If voting mattered, as I said earlier, if voting mattered, they wouldn't let us do it. And I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.